You're not my real dad. Mom's boyfriend is better than you ever were. That's what my son said to me, straight to my face, after I raised him for 9 years. 9 birthdays, 9 Christmas mornings, 9 first days of school. And in 1 second, with 1 sentence, he cut through it all like it meant nothing. Have you ever poured everything into someone? Your time, your love, your whole heart, only to have them throw it back like trash? I stood there, holding his favorite dinner in my hands, the plate still warm, spaghetti with garlic bread. I made it because I knew he had a rough day at school, but apparently, someone else was more comforting now. Marcus wasn't my biological son. I knew that from the start. He was 2 when I met Veronica. His father, Dante, had vanished before Marcus could even say Dad. I didn't come in to replace anyone. I came in to show him what being loved unconditionally looked like. Veronica wasn't perfect, far from it. But Marcus, he was my world. I taught him to ride a bike, helped him through his first ear infection, stood in the front row of every school performance. And through all of that, I never made a big deal out of the fact that he didn't share my blood, because love is what makes someone family, or at least that's what I believed. The signs started changing about 6 months ago. Subtle at first, fewer thank yous, less eye contact, shrugs instead of smiles. He started coming home from his mom's place talking about Dante. Dante's gonna take me to a game. Dante says you're kinda boring. Dante said he used to have a motorcycle. I brushed it off. After all, what kid doesn't get starry-eyed about someone new? But I didn't expect him to start comparing us, especially not with Venom, especially not after everything. Then came the night. I had just picked him up from Veronica's house after her weekend visit. He was quiet in the car, scrolling on his phone. I thought nothing of it. We got home and I told him to wash up for dinner. That's when it happened. He stood at the top of the stairs, arms crossed, and said, "You don't have to make me food. Dante says Mom's gonna get full custody anyway." I blinked. "What?" He shrugged. "Mom said you're not even my real dad, so it doesn't really matter." I stood frozen, the plate of spaghetti suddenly heavy in my hands. And Dante's better. He's got a cool job, and he said I don't have to deal with your boring house rules. Have you ever been so stunned you forget how to speak? I managed to set the plate down on the table, careful not to slam it. "Marcus," I said calmly, "you know I've been raising you since you were 2, right? Since before you even knew how to say Dante's name." He rolled his eyes. "That doesn't make you my real dad." And then he walked into his room and shut the door. Just like that. I sat at the dinner table alone that night, his plate untouched, mine barely touched. How do you explain to a child that love isn't something you can just measure in cool or fun, or who buys you concert tickets? How do you tell a 13-year-old that discipline, structure, and showing up every single day is love? That real love doesn't always look like Disneyland. Sometimes it looks like waking up early for school runs, waiting in hospital lobbies, or taking off work to be at a parent-teacher meeting. Do kids even understand that anymore? Or is it all about who lets them get away with more? I tried talking to him again later that night, knocked on his door, gently. He was gaming, headset on, pretending not to hear me. "Can we talk for a minute?" Silence. "Just 5 minutes, Marcus. Please." He didn't answer. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just about Dante being cool. This was a message. One Veronica had planted. Because I knew her. I knew how she worked, and if she was building a case to take him away from me, this wasn't just emotional. It was tactical. She wanted Marcus to pick a side. And if she could convince him I was just the stepdad, then legally, I'd have no ground to stand on. I walked away from his door that night and sat on the couch in the dark, feeling like someone had pulled the floor out from under me. How do you fight for a child who no longer sees you as his father? Worse, how do you fight against the mother you once loved when she's the one poisoning him? Was I losing him? Was this the end? But I'm not the type to fold. Not when it comes to Marcus. He may not call me Dad, but I earned that title 100 times over. And if Veronica thought I'd just disappear quietly, She had no idea who she was dealing with. So I made a choice. No more begging, no more knocking on doors. If Marcus wanted to test where loyalty lies, I was about to show him just how much I'd been holding up all along. Let's see how far cool Dante gets when the real world steps in. Because parenting isn't about being liked. It's about showing up. And I had every intention of doing just that. The next morning, Marcus came down for breakfast like nothing happened. He plopped into the kitchen chair, grabbed his usual bowl, and poured cereal like we hadn't just crossed a line the night before that we might never come back from. His eyes stayed locked on his phone as he chewed, thumbs tapping the screen. I watched him from across the table. The boy I raised, who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms, who used to hug me when I came home from work, now looked at me like I was just a landlord. "Good morning," I said. He didn't answer, didn't even look up, just kept scrolling. I fought the urge to snap, fought it hard, because anger is easy. It explodes, it shouts. But this was heartbreak, quiet and suffocating. Still, I wasn't going to let silence control me. "You know, Marcus," I said slowly, "if you ever want to talk about anything, I'm here." He let out a sigh, finally lifting his head. "I don't want to talk, okay? I'm tired of this house. I'm tired of your rules. You make everything boring. At Mom's, Dante lets me stay up. He bought me a game you said I couldn't have." His words hit like ice water to the chest. I kept my voice steady. "I said no to that game because it's rated M, Marcus. You're 13, he scoffed. "So what? Dante says ratings are suggestions." "Dante also said he'd pick you up from school last week and didn't show." That shut him up for a second, then, "Whatever. You're just jealous because Mom picked him." My jaw clenched. That wasn't jealousy in my chest. It was a pain you don't have words for. The kind you only feel when the person you love starts believing the worst version of you. After he left for school, I sat alone in the kitchen, the cereal box still open. I'd spent nearly a decade building a life with Marcus. Every sports practice, every field trip, every dentist appointment. I'd been there. Dante? Dante sent birthday cards with cash, showed up once a year, and now suddenly he was better. I knew where this was heading. Veronica was setting the stage. This wasn't just emotional manipulation. This was groundwork for a custody grab. And I wasn't going to let that happen, not without a fight. That afternoon I called my lawyer. Not the flashy kind. A family law attorney I'd used once before when Veronica and I split years ago. We weren't married when we raised Marcus. No official adoption, no shared custody papers. But maybe, just maybe, I had something. "Has he ever referred to you as his father in legal documents?" she asked. "No, but he's always lived with me part-time. We had an informal agreement." "Unfortunately, without legal guardianship or adoption, your standing is weak. But there may be other angles. Does the mother work? Is there a change in the child's environment?" Dante moved in with her last month. He's staying there now, full-time. "Was a custody petition filed?" "Not yet." "Then we get ahead of it," she said. "We build a record. Start documenting everything." That night, Marcus didn't come home. I texted, no reply. Called, straight to voicemail. Veronica answered her phone after the fourth ring, her voice sharp and tired. "He doesn't want to come over today. You don't get to decide that last minute. It's my parenting time." She sighed. "He's old enough to choose now, and right now, he chooses to stay here." "Because you poisoned him against me." "No," she said. "Because he finally has a father who doesn't make him feel like a prisoner." I wanted to scream. Instead, I hung up. Then I sat at the edge of Marcus's bed and stared at the empty room. The sneakers he left by the door. The poster we hung up together last month. His science fair project still sitting on the desk. I missed my son. But more than that, I missed the version of him who still saw me. 2 days later, the school called. Marcus had been suspended for fighting. Veronica hadn't mentioned it. Neither had Marcus. The principal's voice was calm but firm. "We need a guardian present for the suspension hearing, both if possible." "Of course," I said. I showed up 20 minutes early. Veronica showed up 10 minutes late, with Dante in tow. He walked in wearing designer sunglasses, chewing gum like he was about to audition for a reality show. I stood when they walked in. Dante gave me a once-over, smirked, and said, "Hey, old man." I ignored him, but inside, I burned. Marcus sat across the table, arms folded, face closed off. The principal went over the details: verbal harassment, a fight in the cafeteria, language that shocked even the staff. Veronica kept looking at Dante. Not once did she look at me. When it was my turn to speak, I stayed calm. "I don't condone violence," I said, "but I know this behavior isn't who Marcus is. I've raised him better." Veronica snorted. "Excuse me?" I turned toward her. "You didn't raise him. You babysat." Something inside me cracked, but again, I didn't explode. I simply turned to the principal and said, "I've been picking him up from school since 2nd grade, packed his lunches, helped him through every math test. I'm not a babysitter. I'm his father, whether they want to admit it or not." There was silence. Even Marcus looked up. And for just a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Recognition. After the hearing, Marcus walked out ahead of us. Dante threw an arm around his shoulder, but Marcus shrugged it off. "Can I talk to him?" I asked Veronica. She didn't answer, but Marcus turned around. We stood by the vending machine, alone. "I know you're mad," I said, "but I'm still here. That hasn't changed." He looked down. "It's just easier to be mad at you. You're always around." I nodded. "Yeah, I guess that's what love looks like sometimes." He didn't respond. But he didn't walk away either, and that was enough, for now. The day after the suspension hearing, the air between Marcus and me shifted. Barely. Like a hairline crack in a sheet of ice. Visible, but fragile. I picked him up from school like always. He didn't fight it this time, didn't talk either. Just climbed into the car, slammed the door a little too hard, and kept his eyes fixed on the window. "You hungry?" I asked. A shrug. I made grilled cheese, the kind with tomato soup. Still nothing. That used to be his comfort meal. Now, apparently, comfort came in the form of silence. But I wasn't pushing. Not yet. Because when someone's building a wall, pounding on it only makes them stack bricks faster. We got home. He dropped his backpack at the door and disappeared into his room. I left the grilled cheese on the table anyway, just in case. I was halfway through washing dishes when I heard the door creak, footsteps, a plate being picked up. I didn't turn around, didn't say a word, just smiled quietly to myself. Because sometimes, a bite of a sandwich says more than an apology ever could. Later that evening, I walked past his room and noticed his light was still on. I tapped gently on the doorframe. "Hey, can I come in?" He hesitated, then gave a half shrug. Inside, he was lying on his bed, scrolling on his phone. I sat on the edge of his desk chair. "Listen," I said, "I know things are weird right now, but I want you to know I'm not going anywhere." His thumbs paused. "Even if I said what I said?" "Especially because of that," I said. "People say things when they're hurting. I get that. But Marcus..." "Words matter." He looked up. "Why didn't you yell at me, or take away my Xbox?" I smiled. "Because you've already got the world yelling at you right now. I figured maybe what you needed was someone to just show up." He blinked slowly, and for the first time in weeks I saw the edge of the boy I knew. "I don't hate you," he said suddenly, quietly. I didn't react right away, didn't smile, didn't lean in. Just let it settle, because that was his first real olive branch, and if I crushed it by reacting too soon, I'd lose him again. But the peace didn't last long. The next day, Veronica called. "Why is Marcus saying he wants to stay with you more now?" she snapped. "Maybe because I didn't weaponize him," I replied, keeping my tone calm. You don't get to play the victim here. I'm not playing anything, I said. I'm just being the consistent one. You should try it. She hung up. A few hours later, I got a notification from my lawyer. Veronica had officially filed for full custody. Of course she had. We met at the courthouse 2 weeks later. Veronica walked in with Dante beside her, like they were celebrities on a red carpet. He wore a smug smile and an overpriced suit. She had that expression she always wore when she knew she'd done something underhanded, but was convinced no one could prove it. I came alone. Not because I didn't have support, but because I didn't need backup to tell the truth. Inside the courtroom, things were civil. Too civil. Veronica's lawyer started strong, painting me as emotionally distant and unfit for full-time care. Claimed Marcus had begged to leave my house. Claimed I was restrictive and uninvolved in his emotional development. Every word felt like a slap. But I didn't flinch. When it was my turn, I stood and told the truth. About bedtime stories, science fair projects, doctor appointments, suspensions, late-night fevers, school concerts, tears, laughter. All the invisible moments that don't make headlines but make a parent. And then I said this. Biology makes someone a parent by definition, but showing up, that's what makes someone a father. The judge listened carefully, asked questions, then said she wanted to speak with Marcus privately before making any decisions. That was new. I waited in the hallway, pacing, palms sweaty. What would he say? Would he throw me under the bus to protect himself? Or worse, to please Veronica? Or would he tell the truth? 5 minutes passed, then 10. Then the door opened, and Marcus stepped out with the bailiff beside him. He didn't look at me, but he didn't look away either. The judge came out a few minutes later. Her ruling wasn't final, but it was a step. Temporary joint custody remained in place, with Marcus spending alternate weeks with each of us. But she added something unexpected. Mr. Davis, she said, looking at me, I encourage you to consider formally petitioning for guardianship. The court takes consistency very seriously, and your role in Marcus's life is well documented. I nodded. I wasn't just going to consider it. I was going to make it official. Outside the courthouse, Marcus walked a few steps ahead of his mom and Dante. Then he turned around, jogging back to me. He glanced over his shoulder, then said, I told her you were always there. My throat tightened. Thanks, I whispered. I didn't lie, he said. I just forgot for a while. He started walking again before I could respond. But that was okay. Some things don't need a finish line. Sometimes, a step in the right direction is more than enough. That night I cooked his favorite meal again. Not the grilled cheese this time. Lasagna, from scratch. He sat at the table doing homework while it baked. Every few minutes he'd ask something. What's a dependent clause again? Do you think I should retake that math test? Why did people used to think Pluto was a planet? I answered every question like it was a treasure. Because after everything, he was talking again. Not out of obligation. Not because I forced it. But because maybe, just maybe, he remembered who had been there all along. And maybe he realized, cool doesn't raise you. Consistency does. The first Sunday morning after the court hearing, I woke up to the sound of a pan clanging in the kitchen. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Marcus never got up early, especially not on weekends. I threw on a sweatshirt and headed down the hall. There he was, hair messy, socks mismatched, pouring pancake batter into a pan like he actually knew what he was doing. You're up early, I said, rubbing the sleep from my eyes. He didn't look at me, just shrugged. Thought I'd try to make breakfast. The pancakes were lumpy and too thick. The stove was a mess. But I didn't care. I'm impressed, I said. Smells like a 5-star disaster. He grinned. You're gonna eat it anyway. I did. Every last bite. And that morning, with syrup stuck to our fingers and the sound of cartoons playing in the background, felt like a turning point. We weren't back to how things used to be, but we were finding something new. After breakfast, he asked, Can we go to the park later? I tried not to show how surprised I was. Of course. It was sunny, crisp, the kind of fall day where everything feels clean. We walked along the trail, kicking up leaves, tossing a football back and forth like we used to. Then he slowed down, looked a little nervous. What happens if Mom wins the custody thing? He asked. I stopped, took a deep breath. Well, then I'll have to fight harder. But what if I don't want to go? I looked at him. Really looked. Then you'll tell the truth, like you did in court. And I'll do everything I can to make sure your voice is heard. He nodded, quiet. And in that moment, I realized he was afraid. Not just of losing me, but of disappointing her. Have you ever seen a kid try to carry loyalty like it's a weapon? He was stuck between two versions of love, one that bought him gifts and told him what he wanted to hear, and one that held boundaries and told him what he needed to hear. That night, I got an email from the school counselor. Subject line: Marcus, weekly check-in. I had forgotten they can set up sessions for him after the suspension. The email was short but heavy. Marcus shared some confusion about home life and pressure from both parents. He mentioned feeling torn. I'd like to schedule a meeting with you. I agreed immediately, not because I thought Marcus was in danger, but because I knew that confusion could become resentment if ignored. And I wasn't going to let him drown in silence. At the meeting, the counselor was calm and thoughtful. Marcus talks about you a lot, she said, more than he realizes. Oh yeah? She nodded. He doesn't say it like praise. It's more fact. Like, my dad makes pancakes with peanut butter. Or, my dad helped me study for my quiz. Things that don't sound important, but they are. I smiled softly. He also said something interesting, she continued, that he feels guilty for liking both homes. I sighed. That's not his guilt to carry. I agree, but kids internalize that, especially when one parent makes them feel like they have to pick sides. She didn't say Veronica's name. She didn't have to. That weekend, Marcus went back to his mom's place. He didn't hug me goodbye, didn't say much at all. I watched him get into Dante's car, the music already blaring, and tried not to take it personally. By Sunday night, I hadn't heard from him. Monday morning, nothing either. Then, around 3 p.m., I got a call from the school. Mr. Davis, Marcus forgot his backpack at home again. Could you drop it off? I'm actually not sure where he is today, I said. I thought he was with his mom. There was a pause. Well, he's here. But he's saying he stayed at your place. My heart skipped. I called Veronica immediately. No answer. I called Marcus. Straight to voicemail. Then, just as I was about to drive to the school, my phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Can you come pick me up? I don't want to go back to Mom's today. He slid into the passenger seat quietly, clutching his backpack like it was a shield. Everything okay? I asked. He didn't answer at first. She had people over, he said. Dante's friends. They were drinking. A lot. I kept driving. And? They said stuff. About you. About me. My grip on the wheel tightened. What kind of stuff? He looked down. Just that you're not really my dad. That I'm lucky Dante took interest in me. One of them said I should call you the babysitter like Mom does. I felt a fire rise in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. I'm sorry you heard that. I just went to my room, he said. I didn't come out until they left. We rode in silence for a while. Then he said, You don't let people talk about Mom like that, even when she's awful to you. No, I said, because that's not how you love someone. He nodded, then whispered, I want to live with you full time. I parked the car and turned to face him. You're sure? Yeah. I'm tired of pretending. She wants me to love Dante, but I don't. I barely even know him. I put a hand on his shoulder. Okay, I said. Then we'll fight for it. Together. That night, I started drafting the paperwork for full guardianship. It would be hard. Messy. Maybe even ugly. But I wasn't afraid anymore, because for the first time in a long time, Marcus wasn't just my responsibility. He was my son. By choice. By bond. And now, finally, by voice. And I'd protect that voice with everything I had. Filing for guardianship felt like standing at the base of a mountain you didn't ask to climb, but knowing you descale it anyway, because what's on the other side is worth everything. That night, after Marcus told me he wanted to live with me full time, I didn't waste a second. I called my lawyer, even though it was well past office hours, left a voicemail, then sat at my kitchen table, papers spread out, laptop open, heart pounding. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like rescue, not just for him, but maybe for me too. By the next morning, my lawyer had replied. We met that afternoon. She reviewed the documents, asked all the right questions, and then leaned forward, hands clasped together. Do you have proof of emotional inconsistency in the other home? She asked. Marcus told me about a party, drinking, strangers saying awful things. He stayed in his room the whole night. Does he want to testify? I paused. He said he wants to live with me. He's scared, but he's ready. She nodded. Then we begin with his voice. That's our strongest card. Marcus seemed lighter after making the decision, like a weight had been lifted just by saying it out loud. But there were still scars, still moments of silence that carried more pain than any fight. One night, he knocked on my bedroom door. Can't sleep, he said. Mind if I sit in here for a while? He curled up in the armchair by the window, hoodie pulled over his head, knees tucked in. Just like he used to when he was younger, when nightmares woke him or thunder shook the windows. After a few minutes, he whispered, I thought she was going to change, that maybe if I was good enough, she'd stop acting like that. I swallowed hard. Her behavior isn't your fault, Marcus. But she keeps choosing him, and they act like I'm a prop, like I'm only there when they want to show off. He looked up at me then, eyes glassy. Why wasn't that enough to make her choose better? That question broke something in me. I crossed the room and sat beside him. Some people choose what's easy, what looks shiny. But that's not love, Marcus. Love shows up. It listens. It sacrifices. It stays, even when it's not easy. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. 2 days later, Veronica called me in a rage. You filed for guardianship? Are you insane? I'm doing what Marcus asked for. He's a child. He doesn't know what he wants. Actually, I said, voice calm, he knows exactly what he doesn't want, and it is a house full of strangers treating him like a background character in his own life. You're poisoning him against me. No. You did that all by yourself. She went silent. Then came the venom. You think the court's going to side with you? You're not even his real father. That's where you're wrong, I said. I've been his real father for 9 years. The court's just going to make it official. And I hung up. A week later, the preliminary hearing was scheduled. Marcus was quiet the night before. Not scared, just thoughtful. Are they going to make me say everything? He asked. You only say what you're comfortable with. He nodded, then asked something that nearly floored me. Do you think she ever loved me for real? I didn't have an answer, because sometimes the truth is heavier than a lie, so I told him the part that mattered most. I know I do. That's not changing. Ever. And for now, that was enough. The morning of the hearing, we walked into the courthouse together. No Dante this time. Just Veronica, her lawyer, and a whole lot of tension you could cut with a knife. Marcus sat beside me in the waiting area, legs bouncing, eyes scanning the floor. You nervous? I asked. He nodded. A little. I leaned down. You don't owe anyone a performance, just speak your truth. He nodded again, slower this time. Then said, Thanks for not giving up on me. I had to blink hard to keep from showing too much emotion. Thanks for coming back. When we entered the courtroom, the judge looked serious but kind. Veronica's lawyer went first, painting her as a dedicated mother who had always put her son's best interest at the forefront. I tried not to laugh. Then my lawyer spoke. She brought up years of shared school records, photos, emails, joint pickup arrangements, and the counselor's letter, noting Marcus's emotional distress at his mom's house. And then it was Marcus's turn. He took the stand, hands folded, voice low but steady. "I don't hate my mom," he said. "I just feel better at my dad's house." He explained the drinking, the noise, the names they called me, the way he didn't feel like he mattered. The judge listened carefully, then asked, "And when you say dad, who do you mean?" Marcus looked right at me. Him. I felt my chest tighten. The judge nodded. No emotion, just note-taking. But in that moment, I didn't care how it ended, because the truth had been spoken, and it came from the only voice that mattered. Back at home that evening, I made dinner. Something simple: grilled chicken, rice, green beans. Marcus sat at the table doing homework. Peaceful, still. When we finished, I found a message waiting from my lawyer. It was short. Judge approved full guardianship. Veronica will retain visitation. Supervised. I read it twice. Then looked at Marcus. And for the first time since all this began, I let myself smile without caution. We'd done it. He was home. For real. I sat on the porch later that night, the sky wide and clear above me. Marcus had gone to bed early. Before he did, he left a note on the fridge. Just 5 words. "Thanks for being my dad." I ran my fingers over the paper like it was something sacred, because for years I had shown up without asking for thanks. But now, with those words, he had given me something I didn't even know I still needed. Not recognition, not revenge, just truth. And that was more than enough. The days that followed the guardianship ruling moved with a new kind of rhythm. Not faster, not slower, just calmer. Marcus settled into our home like he'd always belonged, because he had. He stopped walking on eggshells, stopped bracing for tension that wasn't coming. And I noticed little things: how he left his shoes by the door without worrying, how he'd hum to himself while brushing his teeth, how he'd start stories over dinner without checking my mood first. It was like watching a boy learn how to breathe again. Maybe both of us were. One Friday evening, I walked past his room and found him organizing his bookshelf. Not just stacking books, but actually organizing them, alphabetically, which, for Marcus, was a bigger miracle than walking on water. "What's this?" I asked, leaning against the doorway. He glanced over his shoulder. "I figured since I'm here now, actually here, I should make it mine again." That sentence hit harder than he probably realized. I nodded. "Looks good." He turned back to the shelf. "Do you think I should tell her?" "Tell who?" "Mom," he said. "That I'm not coming back, not really." I walked in and sat on the edge of his bed. "She knows, but hearing it from you would matter, if you're ready." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "I'll think about it." And I left it at that, because his courage was waking up slowly. No need to rush it. Later that weekend, I got a call from the school counselor. "Just wanted to give you an update," she said. "Marcus is doing much better. His teachers have noticed it too." "That's great to hear." She paused, then added, "He told me something this week that stuck with me." "Oh?" He said, "At my dad's house it's quiet, but the good kind of quiet." I smiled, warmth blooming in my chest. There was a time when he used to say our house was too quiet, like peace was suspicious. Now he craved it. That's growth. That's safety. The following Tuesday, Veronica called. It was the first time we'd spoken since the ruling. "Hey," she said. No greeting, just that one word, strained and shaky. I waited. "I talked to Marcus," she said. "He told me he's not coming back." I didn't respond. I wasn't going to say I told you so. She sighed. I didn't think he'd actually say it. I thought he was just trying to hurt me. I kept silent, let her fill the air with her own realizations. It's weird, she said. I always thought I had more time, more chances. You did, I said, voice low. But you used them. She was quiet. Then, is he okay? He's more than okay. He's healing. Another pause. Well, I'm glad, she said, even if it hurts. That was the closest I was going to get to an apology. And somehow, it was enough, because it wasn't for me. It was for Marcus. That night, Marcus knocked on my door again, same as always. Only this time he didn't come in with guilt or sadness. He came in holding his sketchbook. I want to show you something, he said. He sat on the floor, cross-legged, and flipped through the pages until he found it. A pencil drawing of two houses. One dark and crowded with crooked lines and storm clouds overhead. The other, simple, clean, light shining through the windows. A small figure standing on the porch. That's this house, he said, pointing. And that's you. My throat tightened. I like how the windows are bright, I said. He smiled. Yeah, it always feels like that here. Over the next few weeks, things kept shifting. In good ways. He reconnected with old friends, started bringing home better grades, started calling me Dad more consistently. Not in a forced way, but like it had finally sunk in. I didn't correct him, didn't make a big deal of it. I just smiled every time. Because sometimes healing doesn't announce itself. It just appears quietly in the places pain used to live. Then, one Saturday morning, while we were washing the car together, he asked, "Can I change my last name?" I paused, sponge still in my hand. To what? He looked up at me. To yours. I didn't know what to say at first, so I just asked, "Why now?" He shrugged. Because I don't feel like her kid anymore. I feel like yours. I want that to mean something. My hands were wet, so I couldn't hug him right away. But when I did, I didn't let go for a long time. The legal part was easy. My lawyer handled it. Paperwork, signatures, court filing. The hard part? Explaining it to Veronica. To her credit, she didn't fight it. Maybe she finally understood that clinging to him didn't mean she kept him. It just pushed him away further. The judge signed the order a month later. Marcus Davis, my son. In name, in spirit, in heart. That night we went out to celebrate. Not to a fancy place. Just burgers, fries, and milkshakes at the little diner on 8th Street. The same one we used to visit after Little League games. He slid into the booth and smiled like he used to. Carefree. Loud. And when the waitress asked, "Name for the order?" he said, "Davis," with a grin. And I knew right then, this wasn't the end of the story. This was the beginning. The beginning of a life he chose. The beginning of a fatherhood that no one could ever question again. The beginning of a home built not on blood, but on presence. Because love isn't inherited, it's earned. And every day, quietly and consistently, I had earned it. And now, finally, he knew it too. The name change ceremony wasn't too grand, just a few papers signed and a judge's nod of approval. But to Marcus and me, it might as well have been a parade. We walked out of the courthouse that day with new documents in hand, and Marcus held his birth certificate like a trophy. It feels weird, he said, studying it, but a good kind of weird. We stopped for ice cream on the way home. He ordered vanilla with chocolate sprinkles, his go-to since he was 5. "Hey," he said as we sat on a bench. "Do you think Dante even knows about any of this?" I took a bite of my cone and shrugged. Maybe. But it doesn't really matter, does it? He shook his head. Not really. Just wondering. He paused for a second, then added, "I haven't talked to him in weeks. Or Mom, really." I didn't push for more. I just nodded, letting him have space to process it all out loud. "You think that makes me a bad son?" he asked quietly. "Not even close," I said. It just means you're figuring out who you want to be. That's not easy. Most adults can't even do that." He smiled a little at that. Then he said, "I think I'm going to write about it. Like, the name thing, the change." "You should," I told him. "Your story matters." At school, things got better by the week. His teachers noticed the change too. "Marcus seems more grounded lately," one of them said during a parent-teacher conference. "He used to be defensive, quick to shut down. But now, he's participating, asking questions." They didn't know the full story. But they didn't need to. All they needed to know was that Marcus had stopped surviving and started living. One afternoon, I found him on the living room floor, surrounded by a mess of notebooks, pens, and his sketch pad. "I'm making a presentation," he said. "For school?" "No, for life." I raised an eyebrow. "I want to explain what this name means to me, in case anyone asks." He held up a page. On it, he'd drawn a Venn diagram. One circle said DNA and the other said memories. The overlap in the middle? Real family, he'd written. "Think anyone will get it?" he asked. "I think the people who matter will." He gave the presentation a few days later, not in front of a class, not at some big assembly, just to me. He dimmed the lights in the living room, hooked his laptop to the TV, and stood with his notes in hand. "Hi," he began, awkward but brave. "My name is Marcus Davis, and today I want to tell you how I became someone new, by remembering who I've always been." Slide by slide, he walked through his story. Not the messy legal parts, not the courtrooms or arguments, just the feelings. Being confused, being pulled between houses, wondering if he was the problem, thinking love meant pleasing people. Then the turning point, the fight at school, the quiet nights, the grilled cheese. "I thought I wanted freedom," he said. "But what I really needed was someone who didn't give up on me." I teared up before he even got to the end. His final slide was a picture. Me and him, at the park, a selfie I didn't even know he'd taken. Caption: "The real kind of dad." He turned to me afterward, fidgeting with his sleeves. Was it dumb? It was incredible. He looked down, smiling. "Thanks for staying when I pushed you away." I wasn't going anywhere, kid. Around that time, we started a new ritual. Sunday evenings, no screens, just us. We'd play board games, cook something from scratch, or go for a walk. One evening, we sat on the porch watching the sun go down. Marcus was quiet, then asked, "Do you ever wish I was your biological kid?" I looked at him for a long moment before answering. "No," I said honestly, "because then I might have taken it all for granted. But this, every second of this, I fought for. That makes it even more precious." He leaned his head on my shoulder. "I like being a Davis," he whispered. "Me too." One day out of nowhere, Veronica sent me an email, short, civil. She asked to meet for coffee. No lawyers, no tension, just a conversation. Against my instincts, I agreed. We met at a neutral little cafe, both of us unsure of how to start. "I didn't come to fight," she said first. "Good, because I'm done with that." She nodded, then looked at me, eyes tired but soft. "You did a better job than I ever could," she said. "You gave him something I didn't know how to give, and I think part of me resented that. I didn't respond, because there was nothing to say. I just wanted to tell you I'm sorry." That caught me off guard, and even though part of me still carried the bruises of her choices, I found myself saying, "Thank you." Sometimes, forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. Marcus didn't ask what she said when I got home. He just looked at me and nodded, and in that silence, we both knew. We'd moved on. Weeks later, we were sitting on the couch when Marcus turned to me and asked, "Do you think we'll ever forget all this stuff?" I thought about it. No, and I don't think we should. But the pain part fades. What stays is the part where we came through it. He nodded slowly. "Good," he said, "because I want to remember who I was, and who I chose to be instead. I smiled, heart full, and in that moment, I realized this wasn't just a story of a boy who chose his dad. It was the story of a young man who chose himself, and I was lucky enough to be there when he did. Marcus turned 14 2 months after the guardianship became final. It wasn't a huge party, just a few friends, some pizza, and an ice cream cake with his new last name written in bold frosting across the top, Davis. But you'd think we threw him a parade by the way he smiled when he saw it. "Looks real now," he said, running a finger just above the icing. "Feels real." It was. The papers were signed. The name was changed. The late nights filled with doubt had given way to morning routines and inside jokes. The "maybe this will work" had become our life. But what mattered most? Marcus didn't just live here now. He belonged here. That night, after everyone left and the house had gone quiet, he handed me a folded piece of paper. "What's this?" I asked. "Just read it later," he mumbled, cheeks slightly red. "Like, when I'm not in the room." He disappeared upstairs, and I stood in the kitchen under the soft hum of the lights and opened it. It was a letter, in his handwriting, crooked but careful. "Dear Dad, I used to think being a dad meant buying stuff and being cool, like Dante. But now I know it means being there, even when I was awful. Even when I told you that you weren't my real dad. Even when I said I hated you. You stayed. I don't think I ever said thank you. So this is it. Thank you for not quitting on me. I don't know what kind of man I'll be yet, but I hope I'm a lot like you. Lamaub Marcus." I sat down in the kitchen chair, letter in hand, trying not to let the tears fall onto the paper. I had waited so long, not for thanks, not even for acknowledgement, but for this, for him to see it. Not just the effort, but the love. The following week, Marcus came home from school holding a permission slip. "Dad, we're doing a heritage project," he said, tossing his backpack onto the floor. "Like where our families are from. Background, culture, that stuff." I nodded. "Sounds interesting. But I want to do mine on you." I looked up from the sink, surprised. "On me?" "Yeah, you're my family." So I figured, my story starts with you now. That sentence stayed with me for days, because I realized Marcus wasn't just choosing me in courtrooms or conversations. He was choosing me in identity. And that choice, that was love in its purest form. One Sunday, we took a drive out of town. No destination, just a long road, open sky, music low on the speakers. Marcus leaned against the window watching the trees go by. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what I want to do when I'm older." "Yeah?" I glanced over. "Let's hear it." "I want to work with kids, like ones who've been through stuff. Maybe be a counselor or something." "That's a pretty amazing goal," he shrugged. "They should have someone who listens, you know, who sticks around." He didn't have to say it. I knew exactly who he meant. At school, his counselor emailed again. "Marcus has shown real leadership. He's mentoring a younger student who's struggling. You've raised someone special." I read that line over and over. You've raised someone special. Funny how those small words hit harder than anything grand ever could. Because for years I doubted everything. Was I doing enough? Was I doing it right? Was I even allowed to call myself his father? And now there was no doubt. Only pride. One evening, Veronica sent a photo. It was an old one. Marcus at maybe age 5, dressed as a pirate for Halloween, grinning with 2 front teeth missing. She'd captioned it, "He always had your stubbornness. Took me too long to appreciate that." No accusations. No bitterness. Just a photo. A memory. A moment of peace. I replied, "Takes one to raise one." And that was it. The past was no longer a battlefield, just history. Marcus's school had a father-son event in the spring. Nothing fancy. A 3-legged race, some barbecue, a little awards ceremony. At the end, they handed out certificates. Not real awards, just fun stuff. Most likely to build a rocket. Best high five. Dad with the best grill skills. Then the MC announced something new. This year, she said, we added one special recognition. For a dad who's gone above and beyond. Not just biologically, but emotionally, practically, and completely. Marcus nudged me. That's you. I laughed. No way. Then she said my name. I froze. Marcus clapped louder than anyone. And for a moment, the entire journey flashed through my mind. The cold text, the slammed doors, the custody battles, the heartbreak. And then, this. A room full of people applauding, not just because I stayed, but because we made it. Back at home, the certificate was already on the fridge. Marcus put it there himself. He looked at me, grin wide, then said something I'll never forget. Feels like we beat the odds. And we had. Because this wasn't supposed to be my son. I wasn't supposed to be the one he chose. But when it came time for the dust to settle, for the noise to quiet, for him to decide who stood by him and who simply showed up when it was convenient, he didn't just pick flashy or fun or familiar. He picked me. Not the one who shared his blood, but the one who shared his burdens. So now when people ask, "Are you his real dad?" I don't hesitate anymore. I smile, put my arm around him and say, realer than most. Because the truth is, blood might start a family, but love is what builds one.